1, 2, 3. Now the Mexican has a third for York.
Que golazo! This is a finish.
Over the top, Carducci's out and he's beat. Coimbra gets it through. Thiago Coimbra opens the scoring.
Week 11 of the CPL Newsroom, presented by Volkswagen in the Canadian Premier League. Mitch, you liked that intro music, didn't you? I can see that on your face.
Yeah, I was hitting the turntables there a little
bit.
It
was funky. It was funky. I like that. Anyway, back on track, because we don't have a lot of time to talk about a pretty jam-packed Week 11 in the CPL. It was a special one across the Canadian Premier League. Obviously, we celebrated our 1 year out celebration. I hear that there's a football tournament coming to Canada in now a little bit less than a year, actually.
Gold Cup tomorrow.
That is coming to Canada. Yes, actually. That's exactly what I was talking about. The CONCACAF Gold Cup kicks off in Vancouver on Tuesday night. But there's also another tournament next summer. Check that one out. Maybe do some Googling. You'll figure it out. CanPL.ca might have some information for you. OneSoccer.ca definitely will. It's the World Cup. But anyway, we've got 4 CPL matches to talk about because they were a lot of fun this weekend. We started on Saturday with a doubleheader. Halifax won and Cavalry won. That was an interesting game between two Cavalry, a very red hot side coming into Halifax, tough place to play. York United with another comeback 3-1 win over Pacific, who are just in a real tough spot right now. We'll get to them later. Forge 2, Vancouver 0. So it's double 905 Derby team wins over BC teams this weekend. AGR, I'm sorry, but BC's in the mud at the moment. And then the weekend ended with Atletico Ottawa 3 and Valor 0. But we'll go back to the top to start us out. Halifax and Cavalry. This is an interesting game between a Halifax side that really, really hates losing at home or conceding goals at home. Mitchell, this was your game for us. And we're going to start with Patrice Geyser of the Halifax Wanderers, who maybe gave us the best way to start the conversation here, which is kind of how do you gauge a 1-1 result against a very informed Cavalry team? Let's ask Patrice and see what he had to say.
To win at home, to get a clean sheet at home, to be able to hang on to that is all things that we take great pride in. But it didn't happen. And, the thing about this league, Mitchell, is if you don't win, you don't lose. Every point matters. And I just highlighted that to our guys, that my first year, which was our record year, where we finished tied for second, we had 9 draws. So you don't want to draw. You don't want that result. But, Mitchell, in week 27, that may be a huge point that we got. And it was very, very, very similar to week 1, where with Ottawa we ended up tying 2-2. So a lot of different things for us to look at. It is what it is, and disappointed that they scored, but I'm really proud of the guys for the effort that they put forward.
All right, Mitch, as he mentioned, any point is important in this league, especially when you can stop a team that you're literally tied with in the standings from pulling ahead. Cavalry and Halifax both on 18 points at the moment and stay deadlocked after this result. So, Mitch, is Patrice right? How satisfied do you think that they should be with a point here?
I do think this is one of those 1-1 draws where both teams will take something probably over, something more positive than negative from it. And I think for Halifax, it is that fact that, on a day where you couldn't win, you are able to hold on and get a point. This was something they weren't able to do nearly enough last year. I think that they lost a lot of games where they maybe could have held on for a point. And part of that is, they start the season so poorly and they need to win games, right? They feel like they need to go out and collect 3 points each week as they see themselves dipping lower and lower below that playoff line. this year where you already have some points in the bank on games like this, you can afford to be a little more pragmatic and think, okay, maybe we don't have it in us to get 3 points today. Let's be a little more, careful against a very good Cavalry team and just make sure we at least lock up and get 1 point. And I think that's an important progression for this team. And I think that progression comes because they are so much better defensively this year. They're committed, they're confident, and they're just playing so well back there right now in terms of, in the first half, the spacing was perfect. They didn't let Cavalry play through them at all. And then the second half, just the commitment they show. Adam Perlman clearing a ball off the line. We can talk about it's the montages of defensive plays that we've seen this season and the hilarious celebrations. Perlman had a very TMG-like reaction to that play. This is a team that is increasingly loving defending. They're doing it from the front as well, with Coimbra just sliding in on everything that moved in that first half. So you got to love that commitment from the Halifax Wanderers. And yeah, they would have loved 3 points in this game, but when you can't get 3-1 is incredibly important.
Yeah, the way Coimbra defends the striker is truly hilarious. Like, he will throw himself at anything. It's awesome. But yeah, maybe the reason this might be a bit of a tougher one to swallow for Halifax is you do have the lead 8 minutes in against Cavalry. And it's a gorgeous goal, a dream goal from a striker of Coimbra just getting on the end of a perfect ball from Isaiah Johnston and making no mistake with it. When Halifax, I don't think it really touched the ball at all in the game before then. They didn't touch it a lot in this game because Cavalry had 65% possession, but to take a lead, arguably in the way that you want to, in a quick transition like that, to punish Cavalry when they're so far up the pitch, is kind of a dream start for Halifax. So to not be able to build on that and to let it slip is a little frustrating. But again, it was always going to be a game where they were under a lot of fire. Mitchell, Cavalry, though, they remain very, very difficult to play against. What is impressing you about them?
Yeah, I think last week we talked about their versatility when they didn't have some of their key players in the lineup. They get a lot of those players back from international duty and injuries this week. And we kind of see how they're able to adjust in game. And, when they're down 1-0, they can bring Garrison Mankoff off the bench. All of a sudden you got Levi Lang, who'll be playing at left back. He can shift centrally. Kobza can shift forward. Then you go again, you bring on Alva. You put him in a 2 up front with Warshevsky. We know Camargo can drop back further a little bit more as an 8.
Oh, we know that now.
Ability. Yeah, we know that now. That's true. He was probably staring at Shamin Shom on the bench like, come on, man, come back out here. I don't want to do any more of this running.
It's a long flight from Bangladesh, to be fair. I don't know. He went straight from there to Halifax, I think, through Doha.
Started, played like 60-odd solid minutes, too, which is incredibly impressive. And again, shows what they have in Shamit Shom. But I just think, again, having that versatility in this league when you're playing teams multiple times, but the way Cavalry is able to do it where it's kind of the same guys, but they can shift. You don't know exactly how they're going to line up. It's what Forge has done for years. You don't know where on the pitch they're going to pop up. That's kind of the next step for this Cavalry team. And, it shows how good they are in a game like this. And, that's why they're 9 unbeaten in all competitions, is they can approach it in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And very fair. Kenija Elva scores the goal for them in this game. He's another guy who was away on international duty with St. Lucia, and he comes back into the squad. It comes off the bench, scores that goal. He had a pretty similar point to make after this game about just how many options Cavalry have. So let's hear from a player that I don't think we hear a lot from on this show.
We're very variable and very interchangeable at the back and also forward. For example, when I come on, we could either play 2 strikers or Toby drop in as a 10 and Sergio also drops as an 8. So I just think that's kind of our advantage for us, or one of our strong points in our team, that we could just shift players all over the place and kind of be a surprise for the teams.
All right. Well, again, these two teams, very little to separate them at the moment so far this year. Very different teams, I think, to play against with different ways they want to play. But both of them at home next Saturday. Halifax against Vancouver and Cavalry against Pacific, which is where we go next to BC. The next 15 minutes of the show are kind of just going to be the AGR show because you were at both of these CPL games out west. So you are going to give us a full vibe check of the 4 teams that you saw out there this weekend, AGR. And we start with Pacific 1, York United 3. I think let's start with Pacific and get that out of the way, just because it feels like a similar story every week. They finally scored. They scored a goal in this game. They took the lead 1-0 in the 20th minute. It is Ali and Dom that does so, and I think you were mentioning in the chat during this game, if Pacific don't have Ali and Dom, like where are they this year? Because he's doing it all for them, and still it's not quite enough because they fall. AGR very frustrating Pacific. They didn't speak to the media after this game, so it's hard for us to get a direct account or gauge on how they were feeling. So you, as somebody who is on the ground, just how low are the vibes at this team at the moment?
Yeah, I feel like they're in the ground, right? It's no secret. You can see it on the faces of the players, right? Just even after the game, I was sidelined doing the post-game interview, and you could see Pacific's bench. There's just several guys with like shirts over their head, like they lost the World Cup final, and you can't blame them, right? When you go on a run like this as a professional, it's hard because you just don't know where it's going to end. It's so hard, and a game like this is a perfect example where, again, you're not looking at this game where Pacific got absolutely demolished. No, for 45 minutes they were on top. Ali and Dom scored off probably one of the hardest shots I've seen in person. He tried to break the net. It looked like he was shooting with like FIFA sliders on, the way he caught that volley. And, it was beautiful to watch. The crowd was celebrating. It was a bit of a good vibe. And then all of a sudden at halftime, it's like it just turned. And the worst part for Pacific right now is you think you get a bit of confidence. You break the goal scoring slump. You get the crowd going. And then the one goal goes in. Achitola, scores a great banger for York. And then it was just like the wheels fell off. That's where, again, it's at right now, where you can play 60 good minutes right now if you're Pacific. You can play 85 good minutes right now. But when your confidence is as low as it is, everything operates on a knife edge. And in this case, one banger goes against you and you just completely lose it. And the worst part is 1-1, that's a game, right? Last time, against York, it was 1-1. Pacific got a late goal. Maybe they thought they could build some momentum off that. Turns out they hadn't scored or won since that point. At least they hadn't scored until this game. So it's just it once again, as we say every week, it shows how tough it is going to be for confidence to turn. It's going to take a true 90-minute performance and moments of individual brilliance and confidence to return. And all of those things aren't going to happen with the snap of the finger.
Yeah, I think what's such a killer for me here is it's not even the same losses they've had in the last few weeks, right? Like Pacific score first. They have a lead at halftime.
Just the third lead they've had all year, I think, by the way.
Exactly. This team has won 2 games in 11. And they're a team with a lot of talent. This is really, really frustrating for them. And again, like even in some of their worst games, they've had 1-0 losses, things like that. They've generally been pretty able to defend at key moments, just not in this time. Moments that they can clear the ball, moments where the lane opens up way too much and they allow space for that shot. You mentioned how much force Ali and Dom struck that ball with for his goal. That's the kind of anger that I think we need to see more of from Pacific, right? Like things are not going well for this club right now. You need to see less hanging of the head and more hitting of the ball really hard into the net. Like you need that. You need to kind of be harnessing that anger and that frustration. Next week they go to Cavalry, which is a really, really, really tough way to try and get themselves out of the slump. That's always it would be incredible gravy to get a win there, but a point there would be very, very good. The week after that, though, they have Vancouver FC at home, and for me, even at this point of the season, that might be a must win, right? Like it's a weird thing to say, but I mean for both, yeah. But if you're Pacific and you've got your rival coming into your house and you've had such a difficult stretch, especially after you played a pretty fiery 1-1 with them earlier in the year, like you have to win that game. I know we're jumping 2 weeks ahead, so we don't know what's going to happen next week or where they're going to be, but that's one that I'm circling on my calendar if I am Pacific, or at least if I'm a Pacific fan, as one that you really need. But let's talk about York, because it's, again, more fun to talk about a team that's winning. York United responding really well to that loss at Cavalry last week. 3-1 here. Alex, what did you like about their resilience and their ability to kind of pick themselves up at halftime, come back into this game and then kind of run away with it in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was impressive because as Opta highlighted to us, that was the first time in CPL play they'd gotten a comeback since July of 2024. It's been a while since they've, gone into a match like that. I think there's also another stat too about like, trailing at halftime and how long it's been since they've turned around a result. For York, the story this year has been going up and then maybe the wheels falling off. So for them to have a comeback from down a goal at halftime on the road and just the fashion that they did it. What I like too is just the way they went about it. Like they weren't poor in the first half. It was just, Pacific maybe had a bit of an edge, but York were getting into the good areas, just bad crosses, bad shots. Julian Altobelli, who's been about as automatic as anyone in this league, missed a breakaway. And you're like, oh, okay. And this actually, what's this going to do to York? Like, because it's been the Altobelli show. Yet what stood out after the game is that you look at a 3-1 win, the first time they scored 3 all year, and Altobelli wasn't on the score sheet. It was your left wing back, your right wing back, and your 6. That for York also really pleased Mauro Stacchio because when you watch them play, it is free flowing. I really enjoy watching York play because the wing backs have full green lights. The 6s have full green lights. Heck, sometimes Luke Singh gets bored and he has a full green light to drift forward and have a go from
And we
distance.
know he can hit a screamer too, so...
He tried at one point, almost actually came relatively close in this game. And when that all clicks for York, it's perfect. But what was interesting in this, they needed a bit of a confidence boost at halftime. And it was interesting to hear Achitola say that for him, it was hearing Mauro Stacchio just be like, guys, look, you're actually playing well. Just go be yourselves, be a little more creative, take that extra second. And okay, I don't think his message was go score some bangers, but they took it as that. And Achitola, great goal. That's it. Riley Ferrazzo drifts into the box, scores, and then the Orlando Boteo one might have been one of the best of the weekend. The way he just caught that ball and it dipped right below the crossbar. Max Anchor, no chance. It was a good reminder of what this York team can do when they turn that high flying attack into execution, into final product. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a good point. I do have it here. So you mentioned York winning for the first time since conceding first since July 2024. It's the first time they've won after trailing at halftime since May 11th, 2024 against Valor. And get this one, the first time they've won away after trailing at halftime since September 3rd, 2022. And you know where they did that? Starlight Stadium against Pacific. So, eerie. Obviously, there's no real connection there, but, eerie. But that's quite a long time since they've come back from that kind of deficit on the road. Anyway, we move on from this one to our third game of the weekend. Vancouver FC 0, Forge FC 2. And we're going to start with the Hammers. AGR, you wrote about just how kind of quietly dominant they were in this game. They hadn't scored yet by halftime. Didn't seem worried about it at all. Scored 2 pretty comfortable ones in the second half. And to me, it kind of did feel like this is a win they picked up in cruise control, right? We still don't feel like we've seen the best of Forge in 2025, but they're still picking up results this confidently away from home. What was it like watching them, put together this victory live?
Yeah, it was just like quiet, confident, comfortable, very sterile domination, where it was just like, that's it. The dominance wasn't maybe evident to see live, but then it's just when you look back, you're like, man, it felt like it was orange ball all game long. It was, and anytime they weren't without it, they did such a good job of winning it. Like it was such a common sight to see Vancouver have the ball and they look up and it was just 3 orange shirts on them, just basically like a kid in the playground just bullying, like, give me my ball back, and then just go out and again keep it for 5 minutes, string it around. And on a hot day, in Langley, tough for Vancouver because they just ended up having to run so much. And I think Forge just kind of quietly broke them down. It wasn't one of those, sometimes you see dominant games where it's just like, 4-0, goals are flying early, and it's just more of just an obvious beatdown. This one was more of a mental game where Forge just slowly beat at their opponent until the dam broke. So credit to Forge. One thing that really stood out is just, the versatility of this team. Kyle Becker did a great job of highlighting that after. This might not be the most star-studded of Forge teams we've seen. This might not be the highest flying of Forge teams, but man, they know how to defend, and they just have a gutsy group where guys are stepping up across the roster. Kyle Becker had his first goal contribution of 2025 this year. That's not even been a story because he hasn't needed to. He's shifted from being the box crashing 8 of the last few years to this cool, calm, and composed number 6 that's helping, his team in a double pivot. And there's Forge are just getting contributions like that across their lineup, and it's leading to this quiet domination where you look at the table, they're yet to lose. They got 5 wins, 5 draws, and there's arguments of have they even hit their top gear? Heck, have they even hit the gear below that? And they haven't needed to because of the maturity and experience of this group.
Yeah, as you mentioned, they've yet to lose. They've gone 10 unbeaten, which is a CPL record for games undefeated to start a Canadian Premier League season. That beats Atletico Ottawa's 9 from last year. And as you mentioned, just a team that feels like it still has another level to hit this year. I'll also shout out Jose Masunda with another assist. That guy just will not stay off a score sheet. AGR, you did mention how Kyle Becker broke it down. Luckily, we don't have to believe that your claim that he did a good job. So we're going to actually go back and hear what Kyle had to say.
Since we got together in early days in preseason, I think guys who've been around realized pretty quickly we was a little bit of a different group, just character-wise. I think we have a great mix of players who've been around the league. They know the league, they've played it at other levels, so they have that experience. Then we have a good group of young guys who are coming in. They're hungry, they're determined, but they have the right attitude. They're happy to be there. They're trying to learn, they're trying to grow, they're working on their game every single day, and the guys who've been around have to just keep pushing them. And we have that good blend right now, and I think you see it in a game like today. It's easy, it's difficult. I think on paper it's easy to come in here and see a team who's in last place and kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit. But the most important thing in football is you have humility. And we came in here, we have to show the other team respect. We have to go in and do our job and make sure that we're pushing each other to get those 3 points. And I think there was a lot of good things we did today, and I think we can still have a lot to learn from and grow.
Now, Vancouver, quickly, let's get to them. Again, a frustrating one where 11 shots in a game and none of them on target. 5 shots in the second half, and only one of them is actually from inside the box. Kind of forcing it a little bit. But AGR, what's your thoughts on Vancouver and not just how they played in this one and lost this one, but what you've seen from them in the last few weeks?
Yeah, this one's tough because I don't think it was a poor performance. Because I mentioned Forge dominance. It was just Forge taking over the game and Vancouver kind of seeing what that's like and not being able to maybe keep up and certainly not execute, because you have chances. They just, like you mentioned, they didn't even get a shot on target. They had a few half looks where maybe you curl one inside the post. It's a whole different game. But for Vancouver, what stood out over the last few weeks, again, the performances haven't really dipped where you're looking like, okay, there's a true clunker in there, so to speak. Maybe Valor, I guess, would be the closest in that regard. All this strange one with the red cards. But I think what stood out is, again, the execution they had in May is kind of slipping. And I think that, and we'll roll the clip from Afshin Gapi, because I kind of asked him about it. It feels like they're missing their leaders right now. And I say their leaders as in Nicholas Mosqueda in the attack and Aiden O'Connor at the back. Those two obviously very missed due to their ability, but I think there's been a certain energy that's been missing since they're gone. In the attack, you can just see guys don't have confidence. That the way Mosqueda, when he's on there, he talks. When he's injured. He's right beside us in the press box. You hear him. He's screaming from the press box, telling guys, do this, do that, do that. I can imagine on the field that goes a long way towards a young team. And same thing with Aiden O'Connor, where he's a bit more of a quiet leader. He just wins duels. He brings a bit of leadership that's maybe missing on some of the goals they've conceded. So I think that was something that stood out. And obviously, as Afshin will mention, a bit of a bug in the team. It's tough to be a soccer team from Vancouver right now. I guess that doesn't help either.
Yeah, clearly. It's a little unusual to me that we're looking at Mosqueda and O'Connor as these leaders in his team when these are guys that joined the team quite recently. I weren't there for preseason, but I guess it's a testament to their experience and how well they've come into this group. You mentioned the Afshin clip. Let's start with that, because he did speak a little bit after the game about what he felt Vancouver were missing this week.
Just imagine Ottawa without Aparicio or Rodriguez. Imagine Forge without Becker. I mean, there's certain individuals and players that with just their aura, with their presence, they give confidence to the group and they can bring the best out of their team. And I think Aiden brought that to us in our back line. The stats show it. When he's playing, we're a different team. We don't take so many goals. We don't give so many chances away. And when Nicholas is playing, he brings a certain glue where players have confidence to combine with each other and maybe not have those ups and downs that we see in a game in concentration and performance. So those two are big losses, but there were some players that played that, like Vasco, who had a bad cold, terrible flu, didn't train yesterday. So yeah, I think it affects their performance coming into the game. And regardless of that, Forge at this moment is one of the most complete and balanced team in our league. So congratulations to them. And Kyle Becker still, you can see, is the differentiator in a lot of games.
All right, moving on now to the last game of the weekend. Atletico Ottawa 3, Valor 0. This one was a lot of fun. And to me, we start with Ottawa. This, as a few games have recently for Ottawa, kind of helped cement this club's title candidacy, because it's a game where, it's not quite the same as some of their other massive performances. Not quite. It's actually not too far off their last game against Valor, where they don't start very well. They're a little bit under the gun. They survive it, and then they just run away with the game in the second half. They, kind of unlock that attacking chemistry. They've maybe tired out their opponent a little bit. They've survived the initial wave of pressure and of energy, and then you can just see how methodically and how incisively this Ottawa team breaks down an opponent. They make all these incredible passes kind of through the half spaces and into the box. That David Rodriguez pops up everywhere. Gabriel Antonoro, I think, is a player that we're not talking enough about this season, because he's been very, very important to this Ottawa side. He, again, scores one of the goals here, kind of a secondary assist, I guess, on the Salter goal, because he plays Manny Aparicio in before that cross. And it's just an Ottawa team that's really, really impressing me in the way that they can, once they kind of do smell that blood in the water, they go to work, and there's really not a lot you can do. As I mentioned, it's not a great first half from them against Valor, and Valor arguably had the better chances to go in front. Chris Twardek put one just wide. Chris Twardek probably should have been played in by Keane Williams when Williams went from distance. Chris Twardek had a really great cross into the box that Javonte Lane didn't run onto. Essentially what I'm saying is Chris Twardek played really well in the first half, and nobody seemed to be helping him out. But, that aside, Ottawa survive it. They win a penalty seconds before halftime, which is just a killer for Valor, right? Just so deflating after you've had a pretty positive first half. And then all of a sudden, Ottawa come into the second half and they kind of rip them apart a little bit. But that's 6 in a row now at home in all competitions that Ottawa have won. In total at TD Place this year, they've outscored their opponents 20-8. It is not an easy place to play at the moment. And for me, it's just such a difficult team to play against, because you never really, I don't know how you mark any of their front three, or really front five, because they're all, occupying 2 or 3 different spaces in the span of like 10 minutes. Like, you never know when anybody's going to pop up, and they know each other so well. Mitch, I know, let's bring you in here because you haven't talked in a while, so you're probably your throat's probably getting a little dry. You've watched a lot of Atletico Ottawa this year. This is a very fun team to watch. Just what is making them so dangerous?
I think maybe just to quickly point out, like, a progression I've seen from them recently is we talked about surviving first halves, and in the past I meant they're leaking 1, maybe 2 goals, and then they go in the second half and score 4 or 5 and get back into a game. But over the past few games, it's been maybe they get outplayed, but they don't allow a goal, and that makes it so much easier for you in the second half to go out and find your rhythm. And obviously they'd like to start games better, but again, if you're not starting on the front foot, giving yourself time to get into a game defensively is incredibly important, and that's something they'll do. And as we get towards the latter stages and the games where we're really going to find out what Atletico Ottawa is like, it's 1-0, 2-0, those kind of games. It's not the 5-2 sort of matches that we've seen earlier in the year usually. So the fact that they're doing better and able to win these games is, again, another sign, like you said, their candidacy for being title, the front runners right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just lastly, quickly on Atletico Ottawa, their back three and how young they are. We've spoken so much about that and how well they defend. But this game, their composure on the ball is insane. They spoke a bit after the game about how much of their game plan was moving the ball side to side, possessing it, making Valor run around and run out of steam, which they did. But, Noah Batney completed 108 passes in this game, which is just absolutely bonkers. Like a 97% success rate. That's just a lot of time. That's like, I think, a quarter of all of the passes Ottawa played in this game. And if you look at the map, they're not all just like sideways to Kozlowski and Cloutier. Like a lot of these are bypassing long balls to get through the Valor press, to get them moving around. Anyway, we got to move on very quickly from Ottawa because we're already pretty much out of time. But I'm going to let Phil Dos Santos close us out here with his thoughts on Valor, because, again, a game where they do not reward themselves for a decent start. Here's what Phil had to say after this one.
They shot 5 times on target. 3 went in. When this is the reality, we had our fair chances either to slip players in better positions instead of shooting from distance, or even shooting from distance in good moments. And I look at even now at the end, it's the game's about scoring goals and making the right decisions in the final third. That's always going to give you a chance, and I think that it's been the success of Ottawa this year. They have players that could, in defining moments, solve a game, and we have to work very hard to get our opportunities and our goals and our chances. So, it's the reality of the game.
Got to take advantage of those chances. Let's wrap up here by just looking at the standings very quickly. As I mentioned, Atletico Ottawa still out in front with a 4-point gap. Forge second, just ahead of Cavalry and Halifax in third and fourth, followed by York in fifth on 13 points. Pacific in sixth, just behind them with 8 points. That's a bit of a gap now developing. Valor seventh, also on 8, and Vancouver down at the bottom with 6 points. 4 more big games coming up next weekend as usual. We have on Saturday afternoon, Halifax Wanderers taking on Vancouver FC, followed by Cavalry against Pacific. Sunday afternoon starts with that awesome York United and Atletico Ottawa game. We love all of those games. If you saw that Canadian Championship matchup last week, you'll know that there might be some violence in this one. And then we wrap up the weekend in Winnipeg with Valor against Forge. 4 more in match week 12 that are going to be a lot of fun. And a lot could change, a lot of storylines to keep an eye on, as we hope we have covered decently well. But until then, thank you very, very much for watching, and we will see you next Monday.
1, 2, 3. Now the Mexican has a third for York.
Que golazo! This is a finish.
Over the top, Carter, she's out, and he's